On the news, fear as gunmen abduct travelers on Abuja-Kaduna highway. FG slams fresh allegations against IMN leader El-Zakzaky. Leave now or be repatriated, Burundi tells Tanzanian refugees. Many thanks for joining us on News Now on TV360 Nigeria. I am Annetta Felix. Gunmen suspected to be kidnappers have abducted no fewer than 7 people on the Abuja-Kaduna Expressway. Although police is yet to confirm the incident, witnesses say the gunmen blocked the road at about 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday and intercepted several vehicles, after which they took 7 people and made away into the bush. Among the kidnapped victims include 3 final year students of the Ahmadu Bello University, ABU Zaria. Abuja-Kaduna Road has become notorious for being a flashpoint of kidnappings and armed robbery attacks, despite the deployment of more security operatives on the road. The federal government says leader of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, Ibrahim El-Zakzaky, plans to establish an Islamic state in the country. In a counter affidavit filed by IMN's motion challenging its proscription on July 26th, the government said El-Zakzaky had the full support of the Iranian government to achieve this aim. Following a series of violent protests, a federal high court in Abuja granted the federal government's request to outlaw the activities of the group. The group then filed a motion challenging the directive. The court has now fixed September 11th for the hearing of the motion. The Nigerian government says investigations have been launched into the operations of PNID to unravel suspected foul play leading to an oil and gas contract in 2010. A UK court had on August 16 found the Nigerian government culpable of failing to keep to the terms of agreement reached between the company and the Nigerian government. This next report has more details.
Varying reports have trailed a UK court order granting Process and Industrial Development Limited (PNID) rights to seize $9.6 billion worth of Nigerian assets. Dominating most of these reports are claims that the Nigerian government unilaterally reneged on the 20-year gas supply and processing agreement reached in 2010. At this press conference, Minister of Information and Culture Lai Mohammed sets the record straight. He says, contrary to claims, PNID never performed as agreed.
In the 20-year gas supply processing agreement purportedly entered into with the PNID in 2010, the company never performed.
With this setback, PNID took the matter to court, alleging it had invested over $40 million on the project, but the central bank says there are no records to prove this claim.
As a foreign company, if you're bringing in capital, in which case you are bringing in the money, you will fill Form A and you will also collect a certificate of capital importation. We have gone through our records. We don't have any information in our records to show that this company brought in 1 cent into this country.
Ruling on the case in 2017, a UK court awarded damages of $6.59 billion in favor of PNID, with pre- and post-award interest of 7% yearly, increasing the figure to $9.6 billion. Following an expert report analyzing the court judgment, the Nigerian government arrived at the following.
The experts concluded that the damages were 1. Clearly unreasonable and manifestly excessive and exorbitant. 2. That the damages went far beyond any legitimate protection of the commercial interests of the PNID. 3. That the damages were completely wrong and obviously unjustifiable. Fourthly, and that the damages overcompensated PNID on a frankly gargantuan scale and imposed a punitive award on Nigeria.
Wading into the matter, Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, says the 2010 contract was designed to fail.
When you conceived, sign and execute a contract for the supply of gas products without involving IOCs, NPDC, and NNPC as a party to that agreement, you know very well that there are a lot of questions to answer arising from the execution of that agreement.
Establishing these facts, the federal government has now resolved to probe circumstances surrounding the agreement.
We want to place on record that the federal government views with serious concerns the underhanded manner in which the contract was negotiated and signed. The Honorable Attorney General of the Federation, with the approval of Mr. President, has requested the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the National Intelligence Agency, and the Inspectorate of Police to conduct a thorough investigation into the company, the circumstances surrounding the agreement, and the subsequent events.
The federal government says an appeal has been launched against the court judgment as the country is not ready to lose about 20% of its foreign reserves. Fidele Aguncha, TV360, Abuja.
Just days after the alleged killing of a Nigerian in South Africa by security agents, President Cyril Ramaphosa says discussions are ongoing to tackle the issue. The South African leader gave the assurance after a bilateral meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari on the sidelines of the ongoing TICAD 7 in Yokohama, Japan, reaffirming his commitments to preserving the relationship between both countries. Ramaphosa assured President Buhari that positive outcomes will follow as soon as possible. President Buhari also met with his Benin Republic counterpart, Patrice Talon. Both leaders discussed the closure of the Benin-Nigerian border, which Talon says is causing hardship for the country. Following this, President Buhari promised to reconvene a meeting to review the situation. The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has declined hearing the application challenging the detention of Omoyele Sowore by the Department of State Services, DSS. Justice Evelyn Maha said proceedings with the hearing of the application amounts to reviewing the order of a court of coordinate jurisdiction. She insisted that the matter is already before Justice Taiwo, who granted the initial ex parte order empowering the DSS to detain Sowore for 45 days and subject to review. Sowore had earlier challenged the powers of the DSS to arrest, investigate, and prosecute him or any person under the Terrorism Prevention Act as amended. Sowore had argued that the DSS was not one of the law enforcement agencies recognized and listed in Section 40 of the Terrorism Prevention Act as amended. The National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, has faulted allegations by Human Rights Watch that rescued victims of trafficking are being subjected to dehumanizing conditions. NAPTIP Director General Julie Okadonli, at a press briefing in Abuja, says the allegations are baseless and deliberate attempts to rubbish the efforts of the Nigerian government. Sunji Oye reports.
We are also very concerned that Nigerian authorities are actually detaining these women in shelters, in government-run shelters, and further traumatizing them. The first thing and immediate thing that they can do is stop detaining them in the shelters, because clearly that is causing them a lot of stress and distress, and is not helping people who have already gone through so much. So we want the government to run what we call open shelters and more community-based programs.
That was the submission by the Human Rights Watch that triggered a misunderstanding between NAPTIP and the body. The Human Rights Watch, in a 90-page report released in Abuja, said the Nigerian government have failed to provide the assistance that survivors of trafficking need to rebuild their lives, stressing that the government unlawfully detained many of the already traumatized women and girls. But the agency responsible for addressing issues of trafficking in Nigeria, NAPTIP, is vehemently rejecting these allegations.
After going through the report, we are bold to say that the entire report is a mere figment of the imagination of the writers, as the narratives fall below the standards in the operations of our shelters, as well as the standards for our victim support and assistance. It is important to note that the agency observes all the world's best practices in victim handling as enshrined by the Palermo Protocol, which includes that no victim shall be kept in a shelter against his or her own will. The activities in our shelters are further guided by the National Policy on Protection and Assistance to Trafficked Persons in Nigeria, a national document that has also been adopted by ECOWAS in dealing with victims of human trafficking.
Director General of NAPTIP, Julie Okadonli, told journalists that Human Rights Watch must have been misinformed about the operations of the agency. She said the international body also goofed by not cross-checking its facts from the appropriate office before releasing its report.
The Human Rights Watch report mentioned some unnamed officials of the agency, as well as unidentified victims whom they claimed to have spoken with, and they never spoke to any authorized person. This is quite curious. Again, why would the organization visit the headquarters of the agency for input a few hours to the release of their reports, and also did not reflect the comments of the official they interacted with yesterday? Could it be that the Human Rights Watch had decided on its narrative and only visited the agency's headquarters for formality's sake? I would like to request the general public, the local and international media, to disregard, discountenance disinformation as untrue, a pack of lies, and an attempt to tarnish the image of NAPTIP and the Nigerian government for whatever ulterior motive the Human Rights Watch wants to achieve.
NAPTIP assures its local and international partners that it will continue to abide by international standards and best practices in the protection and assistance to trafficked victims. From Abuja, Tunji Oye, TV360 News.
For Nigeria's democracy to be nurtured to its full stature, there is urgent need for stakeholders in the polity to address the growing concern of misinformation and disinformation in the country. This is the focus of a two-day conference on combating misinformation and disinformation in Nigeria, organized by the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, in Abuja. Tunji Oye has that story.
The consequences of fake news and misinformation in Nigeria is becoming worrisome, especially during election period. The advance of social media, which is making access to information by millions of Nigerians easy, is another challenge that is encouraging the spread of misinformation and disinformation.
I'm especially happy to see the media here this morning because you have a responsibility, obviously, to help counter fake news that spreads on social media. I believe as journalists you take an oath. We certainly do in my profession, in the legal profession. We take an oath to represent the public, and you take an oath to present the news accurately and facts accurately to the public. So civil society will depend very strongly on the formal media, print, television, and radio media to help counter fake news.
Nigerians, like Americans and many others, get their information in a bunch of different ways. As of 2008, there were over 100 national, regional, and local newspapers, hundreds of FM radio stations across the country, nearly 70 federal government-owned national and regional TV stations in all 36 states operating TV stations in those states, plus private and satellite television. And this does not include the internet, which is probably the single source of available information that most folks globally are now getting their information from. According to Statistica, in 2018, 47.1% of Nigerians use the internet, and this is projected to grow to 84.5% in just 4 years. That's an incredible and astonishing growth rate in terms of where people get their information and who has access.
Timely dissemination of the truth has been identified by the speakers as one of the ways to address the issue of misinformation and disinformation. Stakeholders in the electoral process, information management, and governance are expected to take up this challenge.
Democracy thrives on accurate information. Democracy thrives on people participating, and as many people participating willingly in the election and in the management of the affairs of their state. Within the context of human rights and within the commitment of the UN to leave no one behind, I think it is important that information is availed by the duty holders, especially those who are duty bound to have the information, that they pass this accurate information to the public within time.
Disinformation and misinformation in electoral processes and in democracies is one of the factors that is affecting the health of democracy worldwide and in Nigeria more than many other things. It shows us how things can change. In a very short period of time, new technology and new methods of spreading information has increased the risks and the threats involved with disinformation and misinformation to all the processes around democracy and elections.
I think it's quite disheartening to hear the kind of things that we see in the media, especially the social media. One reason is that the politicians think they have a license to say anything at all just because they're politicians. And one other end is that the young people, like I give the example of my own state, Benue State, there are quite a number of young people who don't have jobs. And so every day they go to work on Facebook. They go to work on Facebook, commenting on virtually everything that they see there without knowing anything about it. And that is why these kinds of fake news keeps spreading.
The conference is to come out with an extensive report that will be a working manual for all stakeholders to fight the scourge of fake news in the country. From Abuja, Tunji Oye, TV360 News.
The Nigerian Society of Engineers is advocating for the creation and use of pedestrian bridges. Chairman of the NSC Ikeja chapter, Funmi Akingbagbo, who made the call, explains that the use of pedestrian bridges will help reduce incidents of hit and run on expressways. She also appealed to the state government to repair bridges that have been identified as death traps for commuters.
A lot of people still end up crossing the roads instead of using the pedestrian bridges that have been created for them. One of the things that the use of a pedestrian bridge can do is also to ease the flow of traffic in Lagos. And one of the things that the new government is passionate about is the traffic management in Lagos State. And we are ready to work with the Lagos State government to ensure that there is ease of traffic that can be caused by use of pedestrian bridge. The lack of use of pedestrian bridge is enforced properly in Lagos State. And we have done a sanitization program. And one of the fallout of the sanitization program is that there are so many bridges that are still in Lagos State that are abandoned, that are not security safe for people to use. And we want to call upon the Lagos State government to ensure that some of these bridges, especially the one at Obanikoro and the one at Onipan, are worked on and repaired to ensure that the populace can have a free flow of moving around using those bridges.
News Now will be right back after this break. Do stay with us.
Corruption not in my country.
How work?
How correct, Oga?
What is it that you are doing?
Oga, they command the part now. Make we go sell for.
Oga, na correct kuza be this o. Oga Titus and him boys them. They do am. They will command the original parts, sell them, make plenty kusa. No wonder our customers bring the generator back to our workshop because they bad. And now because of stuff.
Now because they overuse the generator. Plus say NEPA no they give them electricity.
Before I open my eye, Makachuku, look at my dog on the table. Replace this original generator parts back inside this generator of my customer. In short, before una do am, frog jump. One, frog jump. 1, 2, 1. Stealing of generator parts or changing of original parts to a fake one. That is the corruption. Not in my country.
Corruption not in my country.
Stop corruption now.
You're welcome back. We have Fidelia Aguncha for Business News. Hello, Fidelia.
Hi, Aneta.
I mean, just a few days ago, the Central Bank of Nigeria announced what the steps it was going to take to tackle loan default. I know that has been generating reactions. Please fill us in.
Well, that's correct, Aneta. Financial experts have thrown their weight behind the directive of the Central Bank, which states that loan default will be settled using deposits made in other banks. The Apex Bank said this directive will encourage banks to increase lending and as well control the high rate of non-performing loans in the banking sector. Additional Dushoga has more.
Rising cases of non-performing loans in the financial sector is threatening the central bank's resolve to attain a loan-to-deposit ratio of 60% by September 30, 2019. Commercial banks have also raised alarm that in a bid to meet the stipulated LDR, there might be a surge in the number of loan defaulters. To change this narrative, the CBN and commercial banks, after hours of meeting, arrived at a conclusion. The loan default will now be settled with deposits made into other banks.
With these pronouncements, all these banks will share information regularly. The frequency has not been, the details around the frequency has not been revealed, but at least with them sharing information, they will be able to increase the penalty for individuals that default on loans, such that at least they can ease those people out of the financial system or deprive them. They know the consequence is more severe than it used to be. And what you will see is that now we have a situation where there was an announcement by AMCON recently that about just 350 people are responsible for about 80% of the non-performing loans that AMCON has. The total loan debt profile that AMCON is managing is about 3 trillion. And imagine just 350 people being responsible for 80% of 3 trillion. That's a lot.
Reports from PricewaterhouseCoopers PwC Nigeria shows that the small and medium-sized enterprises contribute 48% to national GDP. And an increase in the LDR will help stimulate the economy with a growth in the gross domestic product.
The objective of all these policies we've seen in recent months is now geared towards at least to broaden the base, to ensure that a lot more people have access to credit. There are so many SMEs in Nigeria that find it very difficult to access credit, either because the rates are too high or there's even no bank to listen to their proposal at all. So what the objective of all of this is to ensure you can ease those people who are serial defaulters out of the system, such that those loans will then be available to credible borrowers who are really in need of the facilities.
As much as the Apex Bank is seeking to sustain increase in consumer credit and granting loans to SMEs, its interest rate, still pegged at 13.5%, according to analysts, may be directly linked to customers' behavior to loan repayment.
The rates are so high that without proper assessment, what you will see, like I said, the level of education around things like bank loan and facilities needs to be improved. Because you have cash in your bank account does not necessarily translate to you being able to take on huge amounts of loan at 27-30%. Most businesses don't even do a detailed analysis to understand how much cash really do they have, what's the sustainable level of cash that they generate, and do they really have the capacity to pay the loan.
If deposit banks are able to meet up the 60% target for the loan-to-deposit ratio,
The sector will add 1 trillion naira in credits to the economy, and this will see banks giving out more loans to applicants. With this latest interbank communication policy, accessing credit history of loan defaulters, banks are now at lesser risk of running into debt, and this will help ramp up the growth of the Nigerian economy through investment in the real sector. Adeshawa Odushoga, TV360, Lagos.
We'll take a look at how the Nigerian Stock Exchange fared today after this break. At the close of trading activities today, the NSE narrowly escaped the bear drag, closing with a 0.02% increase in value. Now, this translates to a 2 billion naira rise in market capitalization. Well, today's best performing equity is MTN Nigeria right here, whose share price is appreciating by 9 kobo. Now, with this surge, the capitalization of the telecom giant hits 2.8 trillion naira, making it the most capitalized equity on the NSE. Well, former holder of that title, which is Dangote Cement, sits on the 4th spot of the gainers chart with a 0.5 kobo boost in its share price. Well, let's now move to the flip side. It was a very rough day for the banking sector, whose equities dominate the losers chart. Zenith Bank right here took the biggest hit, dropping by 0.5 kobo, while a 5.6% drop in its value, that's the value of PZ Cousins, earned it the 3rd spot on the losers chart. Well, in summary, we can see that over 130 million shares worth more than 3 billion naira were transacted in 2,866 deals. And the positive trend also extends to the foreign scene, where the FTSE, Dow and Nikkei are posting gains of 0.35%, 0.85% and 0.11% respectively. Well, that is from the world of business. It's back to Annette Felix.
Thanks for that update, Fidelia. Now, moving on, Burundi says it would repatriate 200,000 of its refugees from neighboring Tanzania in October. This announcement has sparked fear among migrants who cross the border to escape violence. Now, hundreds of Burundians have been killed in clashes with security forces since 2015, when President Pierre Nkurunziza ran for a 3rd disputed term in office. Now, over the same period, more than 400,000 people have fled abroad, predominantly to Tanzania, Rwanda, and Democratic Republic of Congo. Both countries say they are working with the UN to secure the refugees' return. The federal government has given cash rewards totaling about 46 million naira to the first batch of Team Nigeria medalists at the ongoing 12th Africa Games in Morocco. The rewards were handed over by the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development to 58 athletes and 4 officials. Gold medalists received $3,000, while silver medalists got $2,000. Bronze medalists, on the other hand, got $1,500. Meanwhile, Team Nigeria has moved up the medals table to the 4th position with 20 gold, 13 silver, and 16 bronze. The development means Nigeria, who were 2nd at the 2015 Games, now have a total of 49 medals after 12 days of competition and with only 4 days left. And that's all for now. Many thanks for watching. I am Annette Felix. Bye for now.